So Kashish, I love you. I really do. Huh? If there's any other girl I care for that's not you, it'll be our daughter. This is our first date and you literally just said my name wrong. It's Kashika, not Kashish. Oh. So today's series is called Psychopaths in Love. We are talking manipulation, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, love bombing, and pure narcissism. And as usual, I'm going to use a piece of media through which I present my thoughts, and today it's going to be Gravity Falls, Season 1, Episode 4, The Hand That Drugs the Maple.
Hey! Do you follow me on the Slack? Follow me!
If you don't know what Gravity Falls is, it's an animated series created by Alex Hirsch that follows the adventures of our twin main characters, Dipper and Mabel, who have come to visit their great uncle Stan during their summer break in the city of Gravity Falls, Oregon. So the episode begins with their great uncle, Grunkle Stan, scamming tourists. He runs a tourist trap called Mystery Shack. He's this man of mystery who runs the shack that seemingly has these odd and mysterious items that are so blatantly fake, but the tourists are dumber. Like you deserve to get scammed if you fall for something like this.
For tonight's final illusion, we have the incredible sack of mystery. When you put your money in, it mysteriously disappears.
Oh, of course.
That makes perfect sense. What a nice man.
That was totally worth the drive.
Meanwhile, the twins are inside watching this commercial of this prominent psychic residing in the town, Gideon. Gideon has a foresight. He's supposedly a visionary that can read people's thoughts in his tent of telepathy. He's also revealed to be Stan's arch nemesis, and he throws shade at Stan in his commercial.
So don't waste your time with other so-called men of mystery.
Out of curiosity, Dipper and Mabel decide to attend one of Gideon's orchestration in his tent of telepathy, and that is when we find out he's not the big burly man we thought he would be, but a man-child. And then Gideon pulls this stunt and the crowd is awed. Literally.
I have a vision. I predict you will soon all say, "Aww."
Okay, first Stan, then this. Makes me wonder if everyone in this town has the IQ of a rock. As Gideon is performing, he starts to develop a crush on Mabel. And unlike Dipper, who is wary and critical of Gideon, Mabel falls for his not in a romantic way, but thinking that he's a little harmless kid. The next day, Gideon comes to visit Mabel, and he lures her by suggesting that they hang out in his sparkly dressing room and do makeovers. Mabel is sold. And this brings me to the first phase of a romantic relationship that involves a psychopath. Gideon is using his cuteness to appeal to Mabel to hide his real sinister side. He's giving her compliments.
Now, Stan's no fan of mine. I don't know how a lemon so sour could be related to a peach so sweet.
Gideon!
And doing all the activities that she likes to do, to the point that she doesn't understand why he's Stan's arch nemesis because he's such a great guy.
I was hanging out with my new pal, Gideon. He's one dapper little man.
He is selling an image of his that fits Mabel's interests, and he is trying to earn her trust and forge an emotional bond. Now, the thing about psychopaths is that they relish in other people's attention and admiration. They don't really care about an emotional bond, they're just happy to be at the center of someone else's universe, and this is so evident with Gideon. He performs for people. He's a fraud who claims that he can see future, thus leading to people putting him on a pedestal. He has hardcore fans and an entire merch line for Pete's sake. He relishes in people's applause and uses his cuteness to manipulate and guilt-trip people into doing what he wants. And this brings me to my next point. So Mabel and Gideon are hanging out at the rooftop of Gideon's factory, where again Gideon starts complimenting her and he says this.
Mabel, I've never felt this close with anyone. So close.
Now, Mabel is clearly uncomfortable as she only sees Gideon as a friend and she likes him platonically. He asks her out on a date, to which she clearly denies, but he was not budging. Then he makes the sick face in order to convince Mabel to say yes to one date. However, on the date, he again proposes to her. He literally trained this rainbow bird to utter out his proposal.
2, 3, 4.
Mabel, will you accompany Gideon to the ballroom dance this Thursday?
And everyone in the restaurant had started to surround them, and everyone was gushing at the romantic gesture that Gideon did. Mabel wanted to say no, but because of the societal pressure, she couldn't, and Gideon knew this would happen. He exploited the societal pressure in his favor into making Mabel say yes.
If she says no, I'll die from sadness.
I can verify that that will indeed happen.
This is one of the very biggest signs of being a psychopath. Often, psychopaths are power-hungry people who are determined to achieve their goal by hook or by crook. Add into it the narcissism. Narcissistic psychopaths are people who are unable to understand anything that's outside themselves. They're just happy to relish in people's attention to boost their fragile egos. And this is substantiated by this next clip here.
Mr. Gideon, the feet on the table! An excellent choice!
Jean-Luc, what did we discuss about eye contact?
Yes, yes?
Notice how Gideon is admonishing the waiter for looking at him right in the eye. Like, how dare he, a peasant, make direct eye contact with him? Gideon craves control over and submission by people he sees beneath him. And all of this gets crazier when you realize that he's only 10. Now, what happens next is that Stan finds out about this blooming relationship between Gideon and Mabel, and he is so against it. He goes to meet Gideon's father, Bud, to ask him to back off when Bud proposes a business deal. He says that they should shun this rivalry they have had for so long and instead merge their businesses. I mean, at the end of the day, the Tent of Telepathy and Mystery Shack are businesses. Scammy businesses, but businesses nonetheless. Stan eats, breathes, and lives for money.
Money!
He was sold. On the other hand, there is Mabel, who's getting anxious as she's trying to figure out polite ways to reject Gideon while not falling into his manipulative tactics. Then Stan comes and says that Mabel has to marry Gideon, at the prospect of which she's horrified. Now, this brings me to the phase 2 of a romantic relationship that involves a psychopath: devaluation. In this phase, the psychopath begins to isolate the victims from their social support network, such as their friends and family. They start to demand their victims' entire attention and make them overly dependent on the psychopath. Now, Gideon didn't explicitly cut Mabel's access to her social support network, but in subtle ways, he did do that. His father bribed Stan to switch his team and push this pressure of marriage on Mabel. Stan was supposed to be Mabel's social support network, someone she could turn to, but his priority is profit maximization and money. Gideon utilized this in order to turn Stan against Mabel and cut Mabel's social support network short. Now, as Mabel is pacing back and forth, figuring out ways to reject Gideon, Dipper decides to take the matter in his own hands. He offers to break up with Gideon on her behalf, an offer she gladly accepts. Dipper goes to meet Gideon, and in the most nonchalant but at the same time in a very brutal way, breaks up with Gideon. Like, take a look at this here.
Look, Gideon, we've got to talk. Mabel isn't joining you tonight. She doesn't want to see you anymore. She's kind of weirded out by you, no offense.
Gideon, being the man baby that he is, who when doesn't get his ways, throws a tantrum. Now, Gideon is convinced that it is Dipper who has turned Mabel against him, because Guys, have you looked at Gideon? How can anyone in their right mind reject a guy who's self-absorbed, self-centered, deceitful, malicious, short-tempered, and whose hair is bigger than his head? I mean, he's every woman's wet dream. Am I right, ladies, or what? Now, Gideon is back home and he's convinced that it is Dipper pies that came between his and Mabel's happily ever after. In his wrath, he thrashes his room, and look at this instance. Doesn't he look like Susie, Jeremy's little sister from Phineas and Ferb? So this was the moment we found out that his amulet actually has mystical powers. And you can probably guess what happens when you give this level of power to a psychopath. So Gideon calls Dipper to his family's deserted factory at night to settle the score with him. He turns around on his chair while creepily petting a crazy-ass doll of himself, and at this moment he's reminding me of another psychopath, Sabrina. Not the carpenter, but the crazy gym leader of Saffron City from Pokemon. Look at them! They both have dolls, miniature dolls that are a crazy replica of themselves, and they're both fucked in the head psychics. A fake psychic in Gideon's case, but the fucked in the head part is still the same. Gideon then proceeds to, I don't know, murder Dipper? Just because Dipper conveyed Mabel's feelings to him. It's giving fragile ego. But thankfully, before Gideon could proceed with this, Mabel comes and saves Dipper. She manipulates Gideon for a change before snatching his amulet. Then Gideon tackles Dipper out of the window and they both go down the cliff. Then we see a bit of a slap fight between them, and when they were both about to get creamed, Mabel saves both of them by using the mystical powers of the amulet. She then destroys the amulet and tells Gideon straight that she is not interested in him. Now Mabel, owing to her self-resilience and Dipper, was able to escape this trap that Gideon had set for him, but a lot of people aren't. A lot of people fall for the psychopath's manipulative tactics only for the psychopath to discard them later when they're bored. And this brings me to the third phase of a romantic relationship that involves a psychopath: discarding. In this phase, the victim is emotionally so drained and so exhausted that they're not able to provide the psychopath with the said admiration and attention. The psychopath gets bored and discards them, and along with leaving the victim emotionally devastated, a lot of times the victims are also financially devastated. And the next is hoovering. This is the final phase of a relationship that involves a psychopath. Hoovering basically means sucking. In this case, the psychopath again starts to crave their victim's attention, and they would reignite the love bombing in order to suck the victim back into the vicious cycle. A lot of people who have come out of relationships with a psychopath have expressed having psychological problems such as depression and PTSD. And a lot of people describe themselves as ruined, empty, and crazy. It's important that we recognize such behaviors and identify such patterns, and if we find ourselves in similar patterns, we get out of there ASAP.